This evening, I'm going to preach to you, and I've named it Get Better, Don't Get Bitter. In Hebrews 2, or 12, 14, 15, of all the emotions, and one of the personalities actually fear the most is bitterness. Now, bitterness is the most emotional cancer whenever you see people eat up on the inside. And it's a disease that will contaminate you, and it's a burden that will crush you, and it's a blaze that will cook you in their own juice. Many who are hearing this message are slaves in bondage to the master of bitterness. Now, some are bitter toward man, and because of his tragedy, that what happened then in your life and mine could very well be. And some are bitter and toward the others, such as a boss or those of injuries that you've been hired for. Some are bitter because parents, and perhaps because they were physically abused or sexually abused. And some are bitter toward a dad who never ever spent any time with you. Many people get bitter toward this church and toward the ministers of the gospel because of a bitter experience. And there are many because somebody hurt their feelings, and they're bitter, and because they have something that did not exactly was what they wanted it to go and to please. And bitterness is a result of feeling that someone has done this and hurt you. And it would be very, very different that it happens to so many people. And at the root of all conflict, wherefore, is a church fight to a world is bitterness. And in my explanation, there is none more dangerous than emotions than the bitterness of bitterness. And bitterness is like a malignant tumor that will eventually turn your hushly body, your healthy body, into an absolute cold corpse. And if you want to remain healthy, root it out. And the sooner it is removed, and the better. Okay. Now, the depth and the deep of roots of bitterness, I looked at the verse first, looked diligently that someone falls and calls the grace of God, and yet their bitterness is trying to get through it, but yet still fall. Bitterness is described as a root, and the root is something that is way more above the surface and invincible to the eyes, but nothing is real. And it's a deep, deep root, because even though it is not from this surface, but in a steadiness and in allness and all the things that bring people down, bitterness is described as a root. And the root is something that is beneath and the surface, invisible to the eyes, but not enough. And it's a deep, deep root, because even though it was not far from the surface, it stretched to the meat and the depths of it all. And so, again, I look back on this deep root, because even though it's not far from the bitterness, it stretches for the very deeps. And likewise, the root of bitterness, because even now through from the surface, then one's lips reaches down into the soil of their one's heart. And the roots of the bitterness even takes little soil and remains very, very cultivation, and it's very quick to grow, sometimes very, very difficult to remove. And it's easy to plant it, or bitterness, but that's just difficult. Was it weeded out? And we've got bitterness for basically one of the three reasons. First, it's all because of what is done to you. And secondly, because of what it says about us, and then thirdly, because of this that is taken from us. And so these are things. You know, it's amazing how Jesus dealt with all these three things. And because of these problems, Jesus said, because whenever you revile and persecute you, and says all kinds of those kinds of things falsely, and for my sake, rejoice and be exceedingly glad. What, for great is these three rewards in heaven. For, the Bible tells me so in the book of Matthew 5, verses 11 through 12. And if you are really going to get rid of this bitterness, you're going to have to give it to Jesus Christ and take it and give it to Him. If somebody has ever something for the prophets, they did this very same thing to Jesus. And they're going to do some things to you. And then concerning the wrong what is done for it, Jesus said, and I went to Matthew 5, 38 and 39, you have heard that it was wrong and said, eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you to not resist all persecution, but wherever and can go. And so what Jesus is saying, and there he says, and this is what we must do, and go to Him. Bitter is better than wrong, than it has to be doing the same thing. And whenever something does not be wrong, then they will not be reading sooner or better. And so, eventually, these are the things that we have to look at. And so, and then, destructive fruits of bitterness. We are exactly in verse 15, what was root of the bitterness does spring up, and it causes trouble. A bitter root is always better than bitter fruit. And the root is one difference. There is no passion in the human heart that promises so much what plays so little as bitterness in the heart. And it saturates the mind and the root of the bitterness because of all the things that are during and you're going through it in your mind. And bitterness will consume you, will absorb you like an absolute magnet. And you will find that your mind is just drawn away and drawn to the person. Bitterness can make you like the lady who went to see her doctor after all, and she felt terrible, and the doctor said, very serious, and said, Madam, I have, and hate to tell you this, but you will have rabies. And she got up in her notebooks and then started making a list and said, Jesus, are you making these things? And she said, no, but I am making as a king and better for the things of God. Now, let me close this message, but it's sadness of the Spirit that you and I have to work with. And we have to let Jesus Christ look through us, and then we can touch it, and then touch them. Amen.